I mean, it's just amazing about that. And it was interesting because when Republican leadership still believed that Trump was not going to, in the end, be able to win before this really got underway in February, they were more afraid of Ted Cruz. If you talk to Republican leaders in Washington, around the country, they were more afraid of Ted Cruz. And by afraid, I mean more afraid of the impact that would have down ballot. That for straight ticket voters, with Ted Cruz at the top, they would lose some close seats, either Senate seats or House seats. And so they were worried about him. Now that's changed. Now they're more worried about Donald Trump for a variety of reasons. But again, as I said, I'm not going to make any predictions because I don't know what Donald Trump what nominee Donald Trump will look like. Because he might look nothing like the person who's running for the nomination right now. And he might find a way to appeal to folks. So I don't know that. On the Democratic side, another thing where we were caught off guard as well. We all remembered the Hillary inevitability talk of 2008, but we kept looking at the numbers this time and said, well, this is different. This is like she was never over 35% in 2008. Here she's 60% in the polls in 2016. And, you know, in all truth, there really isn't any way, barring an indictment, that she's not going to become the nominee this time around. But the long slog that she's had to go through has caught a lot of people off guard. One of the things that I want to point out, and this is one of the things that I started looking at and when I was talking to people, both Democratic and Republican voters across the country, was when they were talking about wanting an outsider, the tone that they used was much different. And the tone on the Republican side was, we're ticked off. We're not just ticked off at Obama. We're ticked off at our own leadership. We just can't, and it didn't matter whether they were coming from the conservative side or the moderate side of the party. There was a significant number of people in both ideological wings who were saying, I am mad at my leadership in Washington, either for not sticking by its moderate principles or not sticking by its conservative principles. And this has been this is where Donald Trump has come from. This has kind of been a chicken comes home to roost kind of thing. So it's real, true anger. Whereas on the Democratic side, it's not true anger. Because I asked the same thing. And I said, well, are you upset? Do you feel betrayed? One of the questions they're asking right now, do you feel betrayed by your own party? And Democrats say, oh, no. I'm voting for Bernie Sanders because we were promised change, transformation 8 years ago. We didn't get it. And this guy's still talking about it, so that's why I want to make sure that I get what I was promised. And it's an entirely different tone. They're not angry. They just feel that they didn't, that the promises that weren't kept for them, and so they just want somebody who's going to live up to those promises. And it was, you ever see that Saturday Night Live skit where everybody said, oh yeah, we're sitting around a table and said, oh, I'm going to vote for Hillary. Yeah, we're voting for Hillary, except I'm going to vote for Bernie. Right? You saw that one? Yeah. And that's really the case. Because then, because as soon as he's out of the picture, they're going to go back and say, yeah, okay, yeah, it's Hillary. It's much different dynamic. We're not sure what's going to happen. One of the things that keeps fascinating me, and we asked this in our New York poll, is the number of Republican voters who say that they will defect. Either, very few will vote for Clinton, but vote for a third party. We actually included Gary Johnson, the probable Libertarian nominee. He was the Libertarian nominee 4 years ago. Probable Libertarian nominee again this time around. We actually included him in a three-way race with Trump and Clinton, and he got 11% of the vote. And in our national, yeah. So if he gets 15% in poll, if he starts getting 15% in polls, he gets into the debates. So I'm obviously going because so far I've been the only pollster who's done that, who's asked who's included a third-party candidate. And I've been asked why. Reporters say, well, so why did you do that? I said, have you been paying attention? There are voters out there who are voting in these primaries who are going to be upset with whatever the outcome is. And they're going to be looking for a third party. Now, I don't know how viable that will be. And of course, there's always the chance that whoever the nominees are who can win over those parties, but those voters. But right now, there's voters who feel that they're going to be very upset in a way that we didn't see 4 years ago. For example, 4 years ago, when Mitt Romney was going to be the nominee, looking at the exit polls, there were some questions about what would you do. And all the Huckabee, all the Santorum and Gingrich supporters basically said, I'll get behind Romney. The only ones who didn't were the Ron Paul supporters, who were a very small group back then. This is the group that's actually supporting Donald Trump right now. It's not because they're libertarian, it's because they're looking for somebody who's outside the box. So Ron Paul was as close as they got 4 years ago. This time, they got the real deal with Donald Trump, which is why he's bringing so many more people to come in and vote. I mean, the turnout numbers on the Republican primaries have been astronomical. And he's bringing more people out to vote. Then establishment Republicans are coming out to vote because they want to vote against him. So then the numbers are huge. But what I find interesting is that John Kasich is the one, every time we ask this question, who's more likely to hold the Republican Party together in November, at least right now, at least the early indications are. And that's been his argument all along about why he's staying in the race. Because if it does come down to a brokered convention, then he's going to continue to make the argument that I'm the guy who can win. I'm the guy who can, one, hold the party together, and two, get the independent vote. You know, and it's kind of interesting. Just one final note, and I'll open up to questions. Is that if you looked at the New Jersey ballot, so New Jersey primary candidates had a file this week, and that included the delegates, because here in New Jersey, we don't just vote for the presidential candidate, you vote for an entire delegate slate. So you can see the names of the people that you're voting for. And I'm hoping that I can figure out a way to ask this, but do I want to vote for the delegate slate that's headed by Chris Christie, Steve Lonigan, or Christie Todd Whitman? Those are the three delegate slates on the Republican side you get to vote for. The Democrats is different, but the Democrat side. So that's Trump, Cruz, and Kasich. Those are the names that are at the top of their delegate slates on the statewide ballot. So, and if you look at the rest of the names in each of those lists, it's just an amazing description right there in a picture of the New Jersey Republican Party. Is the names on each of those three lists, and what they represent. So that's going to be a fascinating way to take a look at what happens here when we get. Because by the way, you know, when we get to June 7th, it's going to matter. Remember back 8 years ago, we moved it up to February. Well, first we moved up to February 20-something. And then that looked like, oh no, we got to. This was when Dick Cody was the acting governor, and we wanted to move it. So he wanted to be part of the mix, and then decided to move it up even sooner to the first available date in early February, and then everybody ignored us because there were so many states on that date that they said, you know, John McCain had basically wrapped it up already, and while Clinton and Obama were obviously going at it, Obama wrote New Jersey off, because there were other more important states that he needed to try to win. So he ended up being in the mix, and spending all the money to have that separate presidential primary ended up not mattering. This time on the Republican side, I mean, on the Democratic side, we might still be at the point where Clinton does not technically have the number of delegates, although I think she will by June 7th or before June 7th. But certainly on the Republican side, that won't be the case. And New Jersey's winner take all. You know, 50. I think we have 58 delegates. So whoever gets a plurality of the votes in New Jersey gets all the delegates on the Republican side. So that's going to be fascinating. So let me open it up to questions. If anybody has any. Yes?
Unemployment numbers are down, but labor force participation is still at an all-time high or very close to it. And in addition, a lot of the employment gains that have been made since the Great Recession have been in jobs that are not necessarily as well paying or as satisfying to the labor force as the jobs pre-2008.
Right.
Do you see any correlation between that demographic of underemployed or not participating in the labor force and the Trump forces?
I'm going to put it to you in a different way, because we're still talking, if we're talking about that demographic, we're still talking about a minority of people, minority of voters who fit that demographic. And obviously it's the majority who are driving this. What do the majority feel? They feel that they're in a position where their children, or if they're younger, they are going to do worse than their parents did. If you are in the job market, if you are, if you are employed right now, you don't feel as confident about your future. That your income will stay on track with the cost of living. That if you lost your job, you'd be able to find another job. That even if you just wanted to look for another job, that you could. That lack of confidence pervades, and it's part of the whole thing about how many people left the labor pool. But it's this, it affects people who are employed too. So it's the same type of public sentiment that's pervading through this. And yes, that is what actually that's what's going on. Is that there's this lack of confidence, there's this feeling of being unsettled that is unique. And there have been actually national polls. Pew is I always hold up Pew as the gold standard for policy polling and asking these types of questions and getting at that mood of the country. And they've been doing a very good job of it in understanding that we are at a point, an unprecedented point in American history, where we don't have that American confidence that has been the hallmark of how we have seen ourselves throughout the 20th, throughout most of the 20th century, at least. Yes, well, I'll go all the way in the back. Sure. I just want to say one more thing, which is off this topic, which was I want to thank the Chamber. I've been involved for the past 8 years now with the Crossroads of the American Revolution National Heritage Area. I really want to thank you for being a partner. It's like, I said when I grew up, it wasn't really political, but it was about the American ideal. And growing up in Camden County, right across from Philadelphia, and growing up with all these things in my backyard. And the reason why I got involved in this, I'm no historian, but the reason why I got involved with this is that I saw the National Heritage Area as a way to kind of bring New Jersey together and our identity and our shared identity of all these incredible things. And looking at our, you walk across them, particularly in this area. I mean, you just walk down the street and you're walking in the same footsteps of anybody from George Washington on down to a slave who had to make a decision about what side he or she was going to fight on. And that to me is just incredible that we live in a place like this, and that we're trying to use that now in many ways to celebrate our identity as New Jerseyans, but also as an engine for economic development. So we want to thank the Chamber for your support with that. Thank you.